Well, I've got a question for you, and I think this kind of everyone can kind of touch on it. The Pope stated himself, and again, the Pope is, I think he's trying to get more Christ-like. He even stated that churches that do not give back to the community, churches that do not actively do things like build houses for the homeless or give students, grants to go to school or provide some type of healthcare, they should not get tax relief. Those churches who choose to take their money and just make their church bigger and bigger and bigger and give their people inside their little organization or their church more stuff should not get tax breaks. Now, and I think that kind of goes back to the same topic of, these people aren't trying to help people, and there's billions of dollars being wasted on churches who want to spend money on themselves and Creflo dollars and stuff like that. Should those churches, in that same sense, should they be more accountable, and should we be more accountable as people?
The Catholic Church these days is more of a business than a religion. I mean, you're like religion, like churches, temples, whatever, should be run as a non-profit, but they're run as a corporation. You get the tithe, you build more stuff. You're always, there's more than just like paying the rent and making sure that you can have the building come to next week. The Pope has his own car. He's got his own special tailored clothing. He is a king in his faith. He is elected, for God's sake. He is chosen by God somehow, but by people who elected him. Mm-hmm. And then he is elected to that role, and then he is the modern day prophet in place of Christ to represent the Catholic Church, and he is treated like a king. And when we talk about Christ, who was homeless because he wasn't, his mission for being here was not to establish himself to die with the most toys. Yeah. He was going spreading the message and making. But
would you even go as far as to say the church should be defunded if they're not helping people? Or not defunded. They should not get a tax break. They should not be able to run as a non-profit. If they don't help
a non-profit, why let them act like a non-profit?
I think that if the church is receiving money because they are receiving money, that they should be accountable for, just like any other corporation. I'm a finance major. I had to go and look at different financial statements. So if you're getting money in, how much did you get? What part of that went towards expenses? What were those expenses? What part of that went towards mission trips to other countries or building homes, doing these efforts? What part of that went to repairs in the building? What part of that went break it down for me. I want a balance sheet, I want an income statement, and I want a freaking cash flow statement. Mm-hmm. And I want to know what exactly you're doing with that money. And then the tax can be applied that way based on them being given. But the idea of because it's like getting tipped as a server. The money's coming from someone else. I'm not getting paid by the government. So the way that you report that in their case is because they're going off of tithes and offerings. All that money comes in.
You have to be honest.
It's like, okay, so what are you spending it on? How are you managing your company? Because that's if you can tax a religion, then you should have something to show for your finances. Mm-hmm. I think if you're going to go off of that, and then however you're going to apply the money.
What about you, Brandon? Do you think they should be taxed or non-taxed if they're not doing things that are helping the public that provides for them?
Yeah, I think if they're not acting like a church, they shouldn't be tax exempt like a church. If you're not doing, if you're just going around collecting your tithes, buying planes, buying cars, and gold gilded stuff, no, you don't need a tax break. Obviously, you were doing well enough. But if you are out helping, build houses, feed the poor, clothe people, things like that, yes, I think that those specific things should be tax exempt, and anything else going towards the church that does not go towards that charitable side should be taxed.
I don't know why gold gilded stuff made me giggle inside, but it did. All right, Jaysin?
I completely agree with both of them. For me personally, growing up in Georgia, I don't know Creflo Dollar, but I know Creflo Dollar, and I don't often hear about him doing things for the community, but I do hear about him buying planes and see him on TV with ridiculous watches and jewelry, and suits. So
That's his
for
big thing.
me,
That's his big thing. People suits like ridiculously like $20,000 suits.
so for me, something like that, if they aren't
So
giving
opposite.
back,
It's unreal.
if they are giving back to the community when they're making so much money that they can buy a jet, then they need to be taxed on almost the same level as, you know, a big time corporation, because
Yep.
you are obviously bringing in that kind of money, so you need to be putting it out, because first off, that's your message. So do that or pay taxes.